Halloween to you all. Introducing my third scary countdown. 2 years ago, I highlighted the 12 creepiest enemies that haunt me. Last year, I took a step further and described my 10 undead characters. This year, I shall talk about their restless spiritual counterparts. Ghosts, phantoms, specters, or apparitions, as you'd say, are possessive in their personality and environment, haunting many victims with psychokinesis and fear. Much like revenants, these vengeful spiritual bodies never rest, and they often have some malevolent unfinished business. Now I'm only counting mostly the evil revengers, those who are spooky, and those beneficial heroic spirits that sometimes help the player as long as they have a creepy feel to them. The usual rules apply here, and let's put these monstrosities to rest. When it comes to Final Fantasy, the sheer amount of ghosts are just astronomical. Within every main installment or spin-off, much like Ermac, there's bound to be a collection of evil souls. Each one varies in stats, origin, and identity, even as a spiritual object, but none of them seem to be playable, except for one. The ghost from Final Fantasy VI. Cyan, Shadow, and Sabin stumble upon the ludicrous locomotive known as the Phantom Train, and it's always being haunted by restless spirits, always taunting them that there's no escape and they're bound to the great beyond for eternity, making them as its own undead passengers. As the Ronin roams the place for his deceased family, the trio come across a silent miscellaneous spirit known only as the Ghost, contrary to the many enemies here. There are actually 5 chances to recruit one. However, like a handful of other characters outside of the returners, they're only temporary. Watch out as if a party member isn't available. Another can be found, but they have lower stats. The main reason it's low is because they mostly suck in battle. No equipment, weak stats, their possessibility costs their own lives, even overriding instant death protection, and they're mostly useful against the train's mini-boss, the apparition, in which it can kill it instantly, while at the same time fade into obscurity. No matter, since it'll leave the team once you escape the train anyway.
I guess I should be thankful.
Huh? Who's there?
I know, Fawful's minion already mentioned this, but how can I possibly pass it up? King Boo Boo was one of the most iconic bosses in not only Sonic Adventure 2, but the entire series. You play as Knuckles, and he randomly comes across the ghastly guardian of Dr. Eggman's pyramid base. Rainbow Tongue, as other fans call him, has a decent battle. First off, he begins to chase Knuckles upon a circular platform, and the Echidna must race behind him. However, if he happens to get too close, the Boo automatically turns around, while at times unleashes a blue fireball or fiery breath. To stall the chase, Knuckles must find the hourglass and hit the Boo using it. Once he does, a portion of the roof opens up, revealing sunlight and reduces Boom Boo into a shadow and blends with his surroundings. Simply just stand on it, dig to expose him, and the startled Boo would try to flee. Just unleash all your fury before he does, and the hatch shuts. It is indeed a nail-biting showdown, especially as it goes on. It's almost like a foreshadowing to another certain underrated installment. For such an epic battle from an underappreciated classic, it's no wonder King Boom Boo has barely made it on here. Before there were the Pac-Man World games, and way before Spooky's existence, there was another villain that doesn't seem to get any praise nowadays, the Ghost Witch of Netor. Ever since her debut, Pac-Man World 2, The New Adventures, she was the original villain governing the Ghost Gang. She pulls off scheme after scheme to defeat and destroy Pac-Man as revenge for antagonizing her mischievous minions. That's what she's mostly known for, mischief and wrath with the way she punishes them. She is a competent villain and a rather interesting one, and ever since Spooky, no one cared for her anymore. As both a ghost and witch, she's often undetectable, possesses lightning, conjures monsters, including a gum monster using children's stolen gum, and even a chronokinetic sending Pac-Man back in time, just like with Chronica and Ultimecia. Like any other spirit, she faded into obscurity. Not to me, she hasn't. And if only she'd worked together with both Spooky and the Ghost Gang, she can most definitely stand out more from the crowd. Yet again, we dive into a juggernaut that has an endless supply of malicious spirits. The Metroid series always has them popping up from the seams, especially with those like Nightmare, the Chozo Ghosts, and this tricky boss fight from Super Metroid, Phantoon. Deep within the wrecked ship of Zebes, Samus encounters a very frustrating boss. Once he can get its tricky patterns down, never waste your super missiles, and reach the obvious weak spot, which isn't easy to access, making it not so obvious. It is an interesting specimen, just like the Ghost Witch. They say the Cyclops cephalopod feeds off of energy from abandoned vessels, such as the wrecked ship, even vicious brainwaves emanating from Mother Brain. In a way, it seems to be a sort of ally to her, and unlike the Spore and Botwoon, it's required to kill as one of the golden statues that'll unlock Tyrian. Aside from its craftiness, it's also capable on size shifting, even 10 times larger than Samus's gunship. And like many ghosts, it utilizes and blends into its environment, making it almost impenetrable. Some say it's either its own parasite feeding off Mother Brain's brainwaves, or power sources. Or maybe it's the ruler's subconscious. It's almost rumored that it can make ships crash land on Zebes, such as its aforementioned home or the Chozo ship. Either way, I like how it's mysterious and unique, and that's what really makes Phantoon stand out above the rest. The creepy crow from Diddy's Conquest has always been one of my all-time favorite boss fights ever since I was 8. Diddy and Dixie face off a haunted apparition of the first boss they'd encountered on Captain K. Rool's ship. Sure, it is mostly a clone of the original crow, as it is his undead spirit after all, but it is still an awesome addition. At the end of Gloomy Gulch, the Kongs must gather a barrel and throw it at Crow, while also battling the smaller Neckies as his summons. There are roughly 3 layers to this fight, each one having the same pattern as avoiding his charges, collecting a spawned barrel from a central platform, climbing up the hooks, and avoiding the eggs he drops while ascending the ropes. Each array is faster and more fierce than the last, even when he'd managed to throw eggs sideways and upwards during the Kong's persistent climb. Thankfully, there's a DK barrel later in the battle, sparing you a lost Kong. This is one of the most challenging and memorable boss fights in all of DKC2. Definitely an improvement of the copy-paste and difficulty spike from Mr. Necky Jr. and Mr. Necky Sr. in its predecessor. It was just enough to barely make it to the top 5, and it was certainly a relief as you'd finally put this ferocious fowl to rest. No one has ever mentioned the Clay Fighter series on their lists, just as the case with past entries like Taffy and Bad Mr. Frosty. Another rare and individual spooky specimen on this list is Ickybod Clay. Obviously, this was a pun for Ichabod Crane and Sleepy Hollow, but he definitely is no joke. I was gonna qualify him as miscellaneous, but I was just underestimated. He was once a spirit sent to the afterlife, but then he became a poltergeist and interacted with the living after the Clayterian meteor fell. He joined the King of the Circus tournament, haunting each of its contenders. Normally ghosts are unable to cross over, but Ickybod's will turned him into a headless and vengeful poltergeist, making him interact between the worlds of the dead and the living. Heck, it's rumored he can also draw power from the restful spirits within the netherworld, which is something no other clay fighter can do. That rivals the deadly alliance absorbing the Solnado. He's a very competent and powerful playable character, utilizing instantaneous teleportation, echolocation, and above all, fright. He was one of my favorite combatants since the Blob and Taffy, despite on being tough to master. And who can ever forget his theme song? Ickybod's prowess, abilities, theme, and eerie existence is more than enough to make it onto the top 5.
Ickybod Clay wins the battle.
Move over, Bungo Bongo, as I had saved you for another list to haunt. Phantom Ganon is what surely took the smoky cake. The Poes and Poe sisters are but kindergartners compared to the ruler of the Forest Temple, as he is Ganondorf's dark spiritual creation, haunting and corrupting the Lost Woods and wreaking havoc ever since Link accidentally opened the way to the Sacred Realm, granting the warlock omnipotence and beginning his apocalyptic regime. Phantom Ganon was the first of Ganon's creations and one of the best, as this is the hero of Time's first encounter with true or evil as he looks for Saria and restores balance to Hyrule by awakening the sages. The beastly bareback rider was the culprit that made her perish and covered the Kokiri and the forest in a thick black cloud of evil, making them vulnerable without the Great Deku Tree. He plays two dangerous games with Link, by first having his steed play hide-and-seek and leap into a painting and deceive the observer with double vision and playing some deadly tricks. If he shall emerge without getting shot, he'll dissolve out of the shadowy portal and fire some very lethal electrokinesis onto you, as powerful as Dark Raiden. If he should fall off his trusty steed, he plays another game of Dead Man's Volley, which was a foreshadowing to his creator and a throwback to him in A Link to the Past. Faster and harder he hits with his deadly spear, and if you're witty enough to hit him with it, he's vulnerable for a few swipes. In my Lost crossover, the cherry on top was proven to be quite the foe against Link, Meganium, and Venusaur, and even incapacitating my trainer OC. He was one of the reasons why the temple's my favorite, even surpassing these annoying Poe sisters. Phantom Ganon always keeps you on your toes, and with the Forest Temple, it shows that developers weren't messing around. The scary apparition is formidable in appearance, skill, and is one of Ganon's best. It's quite pitiful his fate's unknown as he's sealed away between dimensions. And just like Logan said, he does give us the impression that his spiritual puppet might as well be watching us. And he can just be the commander of all the haunting spirits there. Whew, what a bone-chilling thought. Maybe the Headless Horseman can take some lessons from you. While Fawful's minion has mentioned Andross as an aspiring ghost in the Star Fox series, there are 6 others that are just as good. The scattered and restless souls of Dinosaur Planet, the Krazoa Spirits. The 6tet from Star Fox Adventures are the primordial givers of life for Dinosaur Planet. They are governed by the Krazoa god, and their function is to make the world stable by creating the 4 spellstones and preventing the world from falling apart. Unfortunately, after millions of years, chaos struck, when they were fraught with danger by General Scales in killing the Earthwalkers protecting them, as well as them and the stones being separated. The new holder of the spirits must pass each of their tests within the separate chambers they created. If one with a good heart should pass their trials, it'll bring peace. And if one is evil, it'd bring endless terror throughout. The first to encounter one of the spirits was Crystal, during the test of observation, and passed with flying colors, before the spirit possessed her body, sporadically making her separate and store within the palace. and the god imprisoned her until Fox took up the slack with the remaining 5. The god himself revealed to Fox that Crystal was dying as her life was being drained. But little did he know that much like Tamashii was to Shijinko, it led him on a quest of deception. Come to think of it, I wonder if this concept inspired Midway to make Deception's conquest the same way. This, being controlled, caused all the spirits to become rogue and forced Fox to pass all trials to save Crystal's life and the planet. General Scales housed the last one, until the god told him to relinquish it since Fox's pure heart overridden his result. With all the corrupt spirits gathered, the god himself turned out to be the revived Andros as a similar disembodied spirit, much like Tamashii was before Onaga. Fortunately, after Fox destroyed him, the restless spirits became peaceful, just as they did amongst the eons. The Krazoa Spirits are very fragile, sensitive to imbalance and chaos, and would prefer peace overall as a way to use them and restore balance to their home world, and also as playthings to those who govern them, even reflecting malicious or benevolent intent by possessing them and project their personalities through their eyes. Apparently it's painful releasing them too, like delivering a baby, so they can be impactful to the user. And, unlike the prototype dinosaur planet, there were 8 spirits planning on destroying the universe. Thankfully, it never happened here, just as insecure ghosts that prefer peace and light, though they can be chaotic and scary at times. Nice balance to the planet's own Grey Wuxi holding yin and yang, and just like other contenders, there is nothing else like it. No ghostly list would ever be complete without the distinctive enemies from the Mario series, the Boos. There are many reasons why they're called as such. Is there anything I could say that do them justice? Ever since their awesome debut in Super Mario Bros. 3, particularly the castle and the desert world, they became an instant fan favorite. And there had been several variants, but I'm only describing their original and most famous counterpart. Whether it be the shy enemies always chasing the heroes, unless if they should face them and have them cover their eyes or disappear, or turn heroic, much like Lady Bo, or just overall fun to use like those in Mario Kart and the sports and party games. Even the ruler King Boo has melded Luigi into a full-fledged hero. They're awesome and irresistible. Just like their other undead brethren, the Dry Bones, they often house in castles, towers, haunted places, even an abandoned ship. Unlike the undead Koopas, though, it's hard to believe these guys can float and fly. And since their 3D counterpart in Super Mario 64, whenever you hear their cackle, you know they're omnipresent. As the origin to other poltergeists following suit, Boo is simple, small, significant, and sometimes social, hanging around with its own kind. They're the most common type of undead and ghosts, and they're still growing strong, even living as drifting spirits for more than 36 years straight. Only one shall scare them away from reaching the highest spiritual plane. Alright, we counted down 9 of my all-time admirable apparitions. But before we get to the most eerie and unfathomable, let's shed some light to the honorable and dishonorable mentions. The female ghost-type Frostlass has made her way to the Golden Trophy. There is surely no one else like her. The majority of fans would say Gengar, Chandelure, or sometimes Rotom, but they got nothing compared to this graceful ghoul. It is so well worth it once you evolve a Lady Snowrunt with a Dawnstone. And it's not so hard to see why she's also one of Logan's favorites. So, how and why is Frostlass one of mine? Well, let's speed through it. First off, she's known as the fastest ice and ghost type ever, with her base speed stat at 110, which is certainly impressive. Second, she's the only one of her kind that has the typing of both ice and ghost. Third, she has an awesome origin, in which she's based on the Japanese folk legend known as the Yuki Onna, which is women spirits disguising themselves as such, and takes in the unsuspecting victims' souls. She lures men in from snowstorms and ambushes them, taking their spirits as a prize. That'll put these cliché sirens to shame. Hell, aside from her kimono, she also possesses an ice crystal, and her head is very much like a skull. If those factors don't represent the Halloween spirit, then I don't know what would. Unlike Articuno, she ain't here to save you. She's here to scare you and claim your soul like Shinna. That'll keep the opposite gender at bay. Also, due to her typing and the fact she's always levitating, it makes her immune to ground and fighting type moves, with the latter being a bane to ice and ghost, so that's one heck of an improvement. Sure, she may still be weak against fire, fairy, and dark types, but she has the capabilities to make up for it. She has a decent move pool with techniques such as Confuse Ray, Mist, Ice Fang, Ice Punch, Hypnosis, Draining Kiss, and other top moves like Shadow Ball, Thunderbolt, Psychic, Protect, and Will-O-Wisp. Considering I'm a sucker when it comes to women in video games, she exceeds my expectations. Just as Articuno does in terms of cryokinetics, and Nidoqueen for female video game characters. She was like love at first sight ever since Logan's Mega List, which is something I highly commend. And it was before how the series got so damn complicated. Frostlass, being the mashup of Frost and Lass, is nothing to snuff about, and I'm certain she'd be capable on wiping out those pesky legendary and pseudo-legendary dragons. Even Cameron's so-called secret weapon. It was a breath of fresh, icy air. Frostless has impressed me since minute one in terms of concept, versatility, uniqueness, and combines with the chilling fear factors. Much like all the contenders on this list, individuality and versatility are what truly matters, especially for a ghost. I'm the Ecron Rider, and whether it is a restless spirit or amongst the living just for lulz, these ghosts are made for hunting, and that's just what they'll do. And if you don't respect the dead, these ghouls are gonna possess, hunt, and perhaps slay you. Happy Halloween, ghouls and goblins.
Well, excuse me, princess.